Oh, okay.
So I pressed record and Rebecca was in the middle of saying MF, or I probably will have to beep that out. But so
It's a
Rebecca,
good way to start.
So Rebecca, you showed up at my front door crying, saying that you are suffering right now. Why don't you tell the listeners what's going on?
Yeah, so I think people who are longtime listeners know that my mom's cancer returned last year, and she went through this horrifying extensive surgery where they ended up putting part of her leg in her face to like rebuild her face because there was this huge tumor, and she bought herself a year with that. And then
she was in Florida.
She's in Florida. We went back twice. Tried to get her out of the house. She wouldn't go.
You have a very complicated relationship.
Super complicated. You would basically call it estranged.
And you're the only
And
kid.
I'm the only child. And I'm like the only child in that whole generation. Her sister didn't have kids. So like it's just me.
In her later years, you were basically expected by everybody to take on the role of the main caretaker, even though you live halfway across the world and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I told her as the cancer came back, if you really want me involved, you need to come home. You need to come back to Seattle. Like, for those of people who aren't in America or aren't familiar, like, from Seattle to Daytona, I'm curious, like, maybe, like, Alaska to Daytona is farther, or maybe, like, Maine to San Diego.
Or Hawaii.
Hawaii to Daytona.
It's a long flight. It's what is it, 6-7 hours?
It's 6 hours,
Yeah.
and then no one needs to know this, but the way we do it is I spend the night in the Orlando airport and then drive the next day, because it could be a 2-hour drive or it could be a 4-hour drive, depending on I just.
And again, complicated relationship.
Right.
You'd much rather have a non-existent sibling or a non-existent family member do all
Cousin, yeah, whatever. So
even if she lived in Seattle, right?
and if she lived in Seattle, I would do it.
But you wouldn't be super. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're not. You wouldn't be like.
We wouldn't be close. I mean, I'd be doing it out of duty. Anyways, everyone, she died.
Yeah.
She died December 29th. The cancer came back in November. It was a different cancer, and it was everywhere and very aggressive. Tumors were doubling in size every 2 weeks. People keep asking me what the name is, and I was saying, like, worldwide, there were 8 recorded cases of this type of cancer in the last 5 years. Like, extremely rare, no special treatments. My mom refused hospice care and was at her home with her 92-year-old boyfriend. And what was weird is in mid-December, this is how psychically connected we are. Even, I think people know this, like, even with parents, like, the more fucked up your childhood was with your parents. Sorry, this episode, I'm just going to swear a lot. Super psychically connected, because I had to be. So anyways, I was getting this massage in early December, and I'm trying to relax, but I had this crazy vision that she was going to die on my birthday, which is Christmas Day. Christmas Day comes, and she falls, and that gets her in the hospital. She refuses palliative care in the hospital.
And she's starting to become impaired cognitively.
Yeah. So just...
because of the tumors, right?
I mean, who knows? But just so people who've been through this, I just want to talk honestly about it. So she is restrained. She's an 82-year-old woman restrained in a bed for 2 days because she's fighting every intervention they're trying to do. People know how the American healthcare system is. 2 days into this, a doctor calls me. This is my first time talking to a doctor. I've been talking to these beautiful, helpful nurses that are doing everything they can in this ridiculous situation. And the doctor, the generalist at the hospital, calls me and says, "What is happening here?" And I say, "Well, she's refusing hospice care under the recommendation of her oncologist." And he said, "Oh, I can give you power of attorney, and we can put your mom on hospice." So this is the 27th. So she's been in the hospital.
So how are you feeling at that point?
I mean, it is like horrific. I am now in charge of my mother's death. Like, this is, or my mother's definitely going on the path to death. Like, this is insane. This is too much power. And then it's just so typical of our relationship that she doesn't make the hard decision. I get stuck making the hard decision.
Like she's a child and you're the mom.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't want to die. I don't blame her. But like, let's admit, like, you have cancer everywhere. You have cancer in your spine. You have cancer in your liver. Like,
so at that point, she's expressing she wants treatment?
yes.
Oh.
She wants radiation. Yeah. Which will, at best would extended her life a few months. So on the 27th.
Man, that must have been rough.
That was so rough. I was already on break, thank God, from not working, and I was just lying in bed.
And you hate Christmas anyway.
I fucking hate Christmas.
Because to remind everyone, you're Jewish. And your birthday has been on Christmas your entire life. Just to make sure everyone understands that.
Yeah, it doesn't alternate different years. It doesn't show up another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm already like not in the Christmas, I'm like not, I don't know what other people are doing at this time of year. Like maybe like hanging out with friends and having a joyous time. Like I'm already not participating in that. And then, long distance, like gazillion forms to sign remotely, the thing's not working. I'm on a Mac. Just like endless phone calls. Did the form go through? No, we didn't get it. Finally, it gets sent to my aunt who can do it from her computer. I mean, it's just an administrative nightmare. You have to hire an ambulance, a non-emergency ambulance to get my mom to the hospice. Friends or rabbi are calling, giving me guilt trips for not going out. This is also.
What do you mean? Tell me about that. Because you were texting me as this was all happening, and I remember those. I remember those moments.
So messed up. So her best friend is writing me like, "This is the time to be there for her," and I'm like, "Hey, are you not watching the news? This is in the middle of the Southwest meltdown, where like no one can get. I couldn't even get there if I had wanted to."
Southwest meltdown.
Southwest Airlines had a complete systems meltdown for a couple of days, and 90,000 people in America were stranded. And
oh yeah,
like you could not.
The message that somehow you're an insufficient daughter for not doing, like, what could you have done?
Right.
If you were in person, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, she didn't want to see me. She wasn't calling out for me. Like she didn't.
You're on the phone with these individuals,
right. So
what else is you supposed to do? And you were just down there recently, so. So
I so people are saying things to me like, now is the time to forgive her. Now is the time to go. Why are you living in anger?
Yeah, I was just talking with a client. It's almost like this religious dogma that you can't be anything other than 110% dedicated to your parents, regardless of how they treated you. It's really bizarre. Yeah, I kept quoting the John Lennon song. I think I was misquoting it. And in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take. Yeah, that's Paul McCartney, by the way. Paul. Yeah. Sorry. But I thought you were going to quote Mother by John Lennon. You know that song. What's that quote? Oh my God. I mean, that gives me chills. You have to listen to this song. It's I gotta read these lyrics for you. I mean, this song is, I got my tissue right here. Powerful. Mother, because his mom was not a great mom. I'll spare you the details, but he had a very and then his mom died tragically, got hit by a car when he was a teenager, and then this is what bonded John and Paul, because they had both lost their mothers. Mother, you had me, but I never had you. It's so good. Mother, you had me, but I never had you. I wanted you. You didn't want me. So I just got to tell you goodbye, goodbye. And at the end, he's increasing in his intensity of the lyric, and he's, Mama, don't go. Daddy, come home. Mama, don't go. Daddy, come home. Mama, don't go. Daddy, come home. Because his dad was never around, and it just repeats over, and he gets more and more primal screamy. Anyway, so I thought you were gonna Mother, you had me, but I never had you. Mm-hmm. It's just heart-wrenching.
Amen, John, Paul. Yeah, that really kind of sums it up. And so anyways, people are saying to me,
they're guilt-tripping you in that way that I just find to be...
But they're also saying, you're so angry. How can you live in anger? And I'm thinking, do you even know me? Like, if I'm so not living in anger in this choice.
Yeah.
I'm living in self-preservation, and maybe that looks like anger to you.
Plus, you're on the phone with the nurses, the doctors, the everybody, the friends, the rabbi, the boyfriend. You're just not there physically because you're trying to survive the holidays, and you have stuff to do, and you have a child, and you have a lot of things going on in your life that we won't talk about, but there's a lot of things, bigger things than this, I would argue, or at least commensurately big. You're living in anger. Like you wake up in the morning and you're just like,
oh, I want to make my mom feel bad.
Yeah, I want to punish her with.
That never actually crosses my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, what does cross my mind about her is, ooh, I got to keep my distance if I'm going to keep my sanity.
But how? This is like a poem or a book or a movie where it all crescendos when you now are given the choice to defy what she is literally violently fighting for, to get treatment against all rationality, against all
medical professionals. Yeah.
And acting once again like a child, which is understandable. I can't imagine being in her shoes. I just can't imagine that. It just would be, I don't know, I might have acted the same, but you're handed this power, and you are now, like the way we are with our pets, we pull the plug. We make that choice to start the process of
ending their life. Yeah.
Sooner than otherwise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't make that stuff up.
No. And in the childhood that I had, so much chaos, so much craziness, so many times daydreaming, I wish I was in control. And then here I am, 52, in control over the phone, talking with this doctor. He's like, yeah, we got to change this whole story.
And you're being told you're too angry.
Right, by outside forces who aren't even like aware of how bad she is in the hospital.
And the rabbi too?
Her rabbi loved my mother very much. And I think had a patent speech that he gave in these situations. And I'm just thinking, like, I got to get off the phone with this guy. He's so, A, not helping me, and B, just completely unaware. And, he would end every kind of interaction with, I'm there for you and your family. And I'm thinking, you're there for my mom. I need to not interact with you if I'm going to get through this. Nothing you're saying is helpful to me. And I have met many rabbis in my time, and part of that job, much like a therapist, is to clue in. Part of this whole experience is you and I had a ceremony. We sat Shiva for my mother in my house. You met my rabbi. Like, that's the vibe I want in a rabbi, of like someone that you feel like knows more.
Like if he would have said, I have my agenda because I know her, but I also want to know, what do you need from, how can I help you, or where are you at? What would you have told him?
Boy, what are the spiritual teachings on saying goodbye? I need help saying goodbye in this really complicated situation. I don't need you to tell me where I should be right now, because I can't get there. And I don't know if I was there, if it would be helpful to anyone. And I can't eat the food in Florida, so I need to stay home and like eat my non-sulfite diet.
Your health, your energy level, your mood, everything depends on a lot of planning ahead of time and controlling your environment food-wise and other things.
Yeah. So after all the forms are signed and we find a hospice bed, which is a whole nother thing. Finding, you want your person in a beautiful place in these last moments. Whew. So I think it took a day to coordinate all that paperwork, sign all those papers, get everything cleared, get the taxi, blah, blah, blah. She gets to hospice. They wash her, which is like so beautiful. I can't even imagine.
So you had power of attorney.
I have a power of attorney. I have signed the documents.
Against her will, she was transported.
Yes. Well, they also, in the hospital, began what's called palliative care. So they just bring out the heavy narcotics, and she is resting. She has stopped fighting.
Because she's
heavily medicated.
Intoxicated.
Yeah. Which is like, thank God for the safety of the hospital staff, for her safety. Like, there is a big picture here. The level at which she was fighting, you and I both were adult psych. Like, that is dangerous for everyone in that situation.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying that even off and, non-intoxicated, she didn't seem necessarily coherent. I think you said her speech was 30% or something.
No. That's from the reparative surgery to her face.
Oh.
She never got much of her power of speech back.
So she might have had the words, but she couldn't say them.
Right, which was part of what was really hard in the hospital is they have this new person who's physically very aggressive and verbally can't communicate, which makes her more aggressive. It's just this
So
cycle.
her cognitive abilities were presumed there the whole time?
Actually, no. So for those of us in the field, they're doing, is she times 3? Is she aware of, what is it, time, place, and something else?
Orientation.
Is she oriented?
Yeah.
And the nurses are saying she's not quite here.
Even without heavily medicated?
Yeah. She doesn't know what day it is. She knows her name, but not what day it is.
Right.
Which is, at 82, would I know what day? I don't know. Anyways, she's there. They can tell she's not quite there. But here, I don't know what it's like in a medical situation, but here in Washington State, you need a psych eval to lose your rights. And there's actually something called MHPs, mental health professionals, that come out and evaluate. So I'm talking to this doctor in Florida, and I was like, I don't know, how we schedule a senior, or they call it a geriatric psych exam. And he says to me, oh no, we don't need to do that. I can make the call. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so there was a quickness in it of like, oh, we're doing it in this phone call. Not like I had I don't know, in my mind, I'm even imagining like this will take time. Like they got to find the geriatric psych person. That person needs to come down, but there was this like immediateness in it.
Yeah. And that's, I'm guessing, appreciated that it was fast, but of course it could be abused. You could have someone who it doesn't call for that, but a physician for whatever reason is impaired or is biased or has something against someone, particularly if it's a marginalized individual. And if that's true, that a physician of a certain rank could just make that call on their own without any oversight, that seems dubious.
Yeah, but I do know when doctors really don't like when you're not going against their care. When you're going against their care plan, that's like that's a big
Yeah.
So, anyways, forms get signed, she gets moved, and she passed away in 12 hours. I got to talk to her. They put the phone up once, but they said that it agitated her. Whew. So, I, wake up the next morning and she's passed. And the first thought that I had was how much her fight was keeping her going. The medication, knocks all out her ability to fight like crazy, to move on that anger energy. And it was just like somebody kind of powering down and powering off. So I'm super thankful to Palm Coast Hospice and that the end of her life was peaceful and calm man, she just went out.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I think a lot of people with aging parents can relate to the end is so rough and scary. Once your parent gets to the place that my mom was a year ago, it's just so touch and go. Her diabetes never got under control after the surgery, and you're just kind of waiting and, living, just wondering, what's it going to be? Is she going to fall? Is she going to, it's going to be, it's going to be something. You don't know when, you don't know what. And then, you're in the last days of it, and it's like, oh my God, this is it. It's happening now. So it's just kind of really overwhelming. And in America, it's really fucking administrative and crazy. And then, there's that childish part, like all of those things that I wished for, that I wanted from her. Like now all that wishing and wanting is definitely over.
What does that feel like?
That's a relief.
A relief?
Yeah.
Stop barking up that tree?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also this like physical contraction that my life feels of like, even though in the last couple of years it's been, since she left town 15 years ago, the energy has been about a lot less of like trying to build something. It's wild to let go of that story. I don't have to do that piece anymore. There's no more work on that piece. That chapter is over.
It's not sad to you that I'm not saying it should be.
Right.
But,
I really grieved my mom 15 years ago when she decided to move across the country to be with her fourth husband.
I want to hear this, but okay. I want to be clear. I'm not saying I'm saying it's not sad that, because some people will say the fact that she's gone, and even though intellectually I understand that I would never get the nurturing that I wanted from her, but the fact that she's gone, there's this part of me that was still hoping, and I'm sad, I guess, in my heart that hope is now completely snuffed out. There's no hope that I'll get the nurturing that I deserved. That's the sadness I was referring to.
I had that experience 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, wow, my mom will move across the country for a family that she doesn't even know that she's... And that family rejected her, too, of course. Yeah, I have grieved at that level in the past.
And didn't you say that she said that I'm moving to Florida away from you because I want to...
And her 4-year-old grandson.
Right, your son, your kid. And she said, I want to get closer to these random people that had just entered my life in my 60s, completely ignoring the fact that she's never given you the nurturing that you deserve.
And she said things like, I expect you to send Eli out for the summers.
You're a kid. Yeah,
and I had never let my child spend the night at our house because I never knew when danger would descend quickly and unbelievably dramatically. And I was like, yeah, no, that's never happening. Never sending Eli to you. I don't trust you. You've shown over and over again that you are unable to perceive danger. And once danger occurs, you're unable to get yourself out.
You told her that?
No.
Oh.
I thought it. Many, many dangerous, scary things happened. So...
To you?
To you, to me, and to her while she was there.
Oh, I see.
So I was right.
I see.
In case anyone is wondering. The story ends with I was correct in my analysis of why. So, yeah, so she didn't get the fantasy that she wanted. And I'm holding that boundary the whole, all those years. And people have said, like, is Eli sad? E has been very clear. Like, I had no relationship with this woman. I have other grandparents that I have a relationship with, and I will grieve. And so that part was really interesting. Somebody asked if Eli would speak at the funeral. And I was like, oh, hell no, you do not. Like, my truth-telling child. And Eli actually got furious in this process, watching me. I would say Eli held the anger. That was fascinating, like, from a family systems perspective. E was furious, realizing what my mother was making me do that she had not taken doctor's recommendations, and now I have to step in as her child and put her on hospice. He was like, they are 19 now, like very conscious. I can't believe you're being asked to do this. Please don't ever ask me to do this. I see how painful it is. And then watching me process the friends and the rabbi, they were like, put me on the phone. I will rip those people a new one for being so clueless about what's happening. And the friends are holding on to what was best about my mother, but whew. Yeah, so I'm numb. Eli's raging.
You were numb?
I was numb or administrative, or I could really see my childhood.
Survival mode?
Masking. Like, there were a couple situations where, not about the funeral or all that, but like just human interactions where I just had to be on. And I was, cordial and funny and making sure the other person was comfortable. And I was like, oh my God, like I have been trained from an early age. Just seeing the level of masking that I've done over the past month.
And then it hit you in the car.
Just hit me in the car on the way here.
As you were driving up to here.
Yeah.
What hit you?
Well, so did you watch the YouTube funeral?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess...
So it was on YouTube Live.
Yes.
The funeral in Florida.
Weird. Yeah. So no one could...
I mean, weird, but also
modern.
Nice to be there.
Right. No one could get there because of everything that had happened. And so there's now, because of COVID, like the funeral home is ready to go YouTube Live.
Was it I didn't check, but was it a public link? Or was it...
I think so.
Was it an unlisted link? Because if it's public, that means literally anyone could attend.
Yeah. I mean, who would be searching for it?
Right.
But there was no password. Like,
Well, there's a setting that you can have where the URL... You can only access it if you have the exact URL.
Okay.
Like you can't just randomly find it. So I was just wondering if...
I think that was probably true. And,
okay.
And I actually had to post on my Facebook page, I will not be available to problem solve how to YouTube link to my mother's funeral the day of the funeral, because back channels all these... My mother had 40 first cousins, and she was the second oldest. So,
it's not hard. You literally just click on it.
I know, but people are like, I don't understand, and it's at the bottom of the page.
You literally just click on the URL.
And, I was like, I got people...
There's no app involved. There's no password
You got
involved.
Younger people in your lives, maybe turn to them.
Yeah, I think I remember.
Questions.
I think I remember seeing this, or you told me about it, and I was just like, why would anyone be confused about how to click on a goddamn link? If you're that tech unsavvy, like... there's just no chance of anything working out in your life. So, yeah. Yeah.
So it was, so that part, so there was a lot of, I've seen a lot of this about being an only child. Like everything is coming at me. And I'm like, people like turn to someone else right now. Maybe not right at me. I'm doing a lot of deflecting. I actually wrote all my super witchy friends and said, I don't know what's happening now, but like I need your witchy energy, whatever form you use, to please cast an intention or a spell for me to deflect people from me, because too much is coming at me and I just can't. So
your house plaque is coming in the mail.
Ooh, witchy house for one. So the ceremony is wild, and E is sitting next to me. They cried when my mom's boyfriend put dirt on the grave, which was powerful even in the video. Mm-hmm. The rabbi did a lovely job. We've been talking about the mourner's Kaddish for years, and I think you really got to see it in action. It's this beautiful prayer that is said every Saturday morning, and then you say it daily. And if you're in mourning, I've been painting instead. That's a whole nother story. Process painting.
You've been painting a lot.
I've been painting prolifically, crazy good paintings about dead bodies, cancer bodies, my own grief, my own crazy spilkus about the way that she was buried, because in Judaism it's very simple. You're not embalmed. It's just a cloth shroud in a wood box. But in Florida, because the water table is so high, they have to make a concrete upside down sarcophagus basically to put the body in so that it doesn't get washed.
Doesn't float to the surface.
Yeah.
is what happens. That's why in New Orleans everyone is buried above ground, actually, in a concrete box. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking a lot about how far we are from the actual Jewish ritual. It's also insanely expensive to build that concrete sarcophagus.
Yeah.
In the native peoples of coastal Florida built burial mounds, and there's one pretty close to where my mom lived. And so I'm painting burial mounds and thinking a lot about the traditional ways of death. And I've decided to get composted because I believe it's closer to the original intent of the Jewish burial ceremony than what the current...
For yourself?
For myself.
How does that work?
It's super cool. In Washington State, it's legal, and I think in a couple others, like Oregon and Colorado, there are these facilities that compost you. They put you in these giant containers, and it's a couple month process. And when it's done, you're just dirt.
Do they literally turn you over like it's regular compost?
I think it occurs naturally in the box. I think there's like one set of things that happen, and then a couple months or
so
month.
To be specific, you got worms and bugs.
I don't know if it might just be dirt. You got to look this up. You should
some sort of
you should have these people on the show.
Some sort of organism is consuming your body.
If you have you should get those people on this show. I want to come and I want to learn how I'll be in the end. But it is when I think for myself what a shroud in a wooden box out in the desert, you're supposed to just compost.
Yeah.
And ashes to ashes, dust to dust, kind of, instead of what currently is happening to my mother's body in this concrete sarcophagus. I just got freaked out by the visuals, and I'm stuck. This is what I'm painting now over and over again. There are these burial mounds and the body in the mound, and I'm trying to make sense of it because it really freaked me out.
It literally freaked you out?
It freaked me out.
Yeah.
And it freaked my aunt out. Also, I know that there's a rumor out there that Jews are secretly in control of the world. But I can tell you it's not true, because if there's one state that I associate with dying Jews, it's Florida. And the Jews have a 7,000-year-old tradition of burying their dead in 3 days. I think my mother is the first Jewish person in 7,000 years of Jewish lineage that was unable to be buried in 3 days, because in Florida, in order to be buried, a representative of the health department has to come and verify the body, and that takes more than 3 days. So my mother was buried in 7 days.
Verify
that she's
dead.
For
a death certificate or something?
Yeah. They have to sign off. It can't just be that. I think here in Washington State, it's just a doctor can say you're dead and we move on. But I think this speaks to Florida and fraud and a third party.
Oh, meaning that there were dubious physicians claiming people were dead when they weren't. Like to fake people's deaths or to bury
insurance
people
fraud.
who were alive? Oh, okay.
There's a lot of money in
death. Yeah.
So my aunt and I are having this massive existential crisis as my mother is not buried in 3 days. Like, it was palpable for her and I. We are like freaking out. It just doesn't make any sense. And then there's this other thing that happens, which is after the burial. It's traditional to have 7 days. I just did 1 day, where you sit Shiva. You cover the mirrors so that the grieving person doesn't have to attend to their physical body. I found my grandmother's prayer book that had many more instructions. There it was that you only wash and change your clothes once a week and Shabbat if you're grieving a parent. I told this to my rabbi. It was like, is that book from the Middle Ages? I've never heard that one. So I didn't, I have been changing my clothes. Showering. Yeah, there's a lot of like rituals. I think if there's one thing Jews do really well, it is the ritual of death. And ours got really tweaked because of the way the Florida works. So I was kind of sitting Shiva before the burial, not really doing much, just eating and sleeping. Also in Shiva, people come to your house and pray, but the grieving people don't need to participate, which I think is really amazing. And then finally, a week or two after her death, you came to my house with some other people, and my rabbi led this amazing Shiva service where I and Eli were just able to speak really openly about the ways that my mom wasn't a good parent. And that was really powerful to be witnessed and grieving in my community and the complexities and just not have to pretend.
Mm-hmm. And your rabbi didn't shame you?
No. He wanted to hear more. I mean, I kind of had to like, dude, we're not going to go. We'll just skirt the subject. And it was beautiful, and people brought food, and we said the mourner's Kaddish again, which is like just the coolest prayer ever.
And we read her poems.
Yes, that was wild. You read one of my mom's poems.
Mm-hmm. I actually liked it. I'm not a poetry aficionado, so I often am bewildered as to what people hear when they hear a poem. Sometimes I get it, but a lot of times I don't. And I was reading her poetry in that book for the first time, and a lot of it I was like, it was going over my head. But the one that I just randomly grabbed and read was pretty straightforward. It was a poem about she's at 7-Eleven, I think late at night, and she is, I think, seeing people couple and wondering if she'll ever have someone that will love her. And it was written in a pretty straightforward but moving manner. It also seemed like she was looking down at people who go to 7-Eleven, even though she was at 7-Eleven.
It is really typical. You wrote and you were like, that poem was kind of snooty. And I was like, yeah, you got my mom. Like, she couldn't admit her station in life. She viewed herself as much higher. So,
but it also expressed a longing
for love.
For love that,
yes,
I think she was halfway saying in the poem, resigned to never attaining.
Which she did attain later. All those poems were about grieving her fourth husband.
Who died?
Who died, yes. Yeah. So my mom died and was the same age as Vivienne Westwood, the punk fashion designer who literally created the God Save the Queen t-shirt with the safety pins. And I could just see my mom like corralling Vivienne Westwood in the afterlife and being like, we're the same. My mom really had a very strong sense of herself. And she was a great poet. I mean, that was one of the really complicating factors, is that people who knew her through her poetry, and she taught English at the college level for decades, people who knew her in that light loved her. And if that was her only job, that would have been great. One of my friends was profoundly moved by one of the poems that my mom wrote about death. So my mom was a great poet. She's not a great mom. Not a functioning mom. Really powerful poet. So it was great to read her poems. And that was actually the rabbi's idea. I was like, how on earth do we grieve a woman who was, the people who are there who knew her don't have any good memories of her? And there's a lot of people at this because she left 15 years ago that don't know her at all. And so we were talking to her. He was like, do you have pictures? Do you have letters? And I was like, oh, she wrote all these poems. She wrote all these poetry books. Yeah, reading her poems. I didn't read, but Eli read. Everyone there, even Stacy, who I associate with not public speaking.
Well, yeah, literally at your Hanukkah get-together, we had a small get-together at your house. Everyone was going around. It was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us. everyone's going around talking about
Light in the darkness.
what's some example of light in the darkness.
Stacy says no.
So, yeah, Stacey. Yeah,
Stacy says pass.
Pass. I'm not saying anything. Yeah, so she's not someone that is, on one hand, it's a pro because she's a really good listener.
Yeah. No, when I was like, I'm staring at each, and I look at her and I just assume we're going to go, and she's got a poem ready, and I was like, damn!
Well,
Stacey!
I think for her, it would be a step too far to, in the middle of a memorial service, did not, for your own, self-interested reasons to not participate in that would be, I think she understood that was not, that
But
really.
she could have. I mean, she could have.
Yeah.
But Jews, see, this is where Christianity and Judaism are different. Like, in Judaism, you could always be like, no. There's a lot. Whereas I've really felt that. I've learned a ton. I've had some amazing conversations with my friends from different cultures about how their culture does death. And Beth Donahue, who you and I both taught with and now runs a
art
therapy master's program, an online one through the big Antioch in Ohio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's designing. Anyways, it's amazing what she's up to. She's always been amazing, and now she's at the forefront of adult education online master's program, blah, blah, blah. She was talking to me about Irish death rituals, because it's funny, like, what's the same? So in Judaism, you cover the mirrors so that the griever doesn't have to see themselves. In Irish culture, you cover the mirrors so that the dead, as their spirit is rising, don't get lost in the mirror and get lost in the fae. Yeah, so that was really, there were so many great moments. So I put my friend Brian, the classic Jewish middle-aged man, in charge of the, if anyone had any questions during the Shiva, I just said, go talk to Brian. Like, I just can't deal.
Well, you specifically said that, I don't know if this is a tradition, that for the mourners, you're not supposed to ask them. I wasn't supposed to ask you for anything. Mm-hmm. And you weren't supposed to have to work, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. So as soon as the Shiva is over, as soon as the service, the home service is over, and I think Judaism is different than some faiths, and a lot of stuff just takes place in the home. So Shiva is a completely home-based memorial. As soon as the prayers are over and the rabbi says that wraps it up, Brian bolts up and starts eating, goes to the food table, and I just started laughing because I was like, Brian, way to show everybody what to do. Like, this is a Jewish event. We're going to talk, we're going to eat, we're going to keep talking. It was really, really good for me. And I think in my brain that will be the funeral because, I have friends.
Well, and it was a lot more personal. It was even more centered on your mom in a way. Mm-hmm. The funeral at the gravesite was, it had some to do with your mom, but I don't know, it didn't feel as personal to me than your.
Well, this was really her words with all of those poems.
Yeah.
Yeah, my aunt wrote a lovely eulogy.
Yeah.
And then a poet, a really well-known poet that was a friend of my mom, read a sonnet. I don't know if you noticed that poem was in rhyming couplets. It was in a traditional Shakespearean sonnet form. Yeah, I mean, it was lovely, but it was, I think, as a lot of modern funerals are now, it's like so detached from the person.
Yeah. Well, have you thought about turmeric?
What would help my grief?
Yeah.
I think I should start drinking like a turmeric tea or take, maybe there's a paste.
Mm-hmm. Candles.
A turmeric candle. Mm-hmm. I should light a turmeric candle.
A garland that you could wear.
Of turmeric.
I don't even know what turmeric is. What is
turmeric?
It?
What's funny about turmeric is it is a staining spice. Like, it'll turn everything orange. So the idea of like a turmeric cream,
It's like a cinnamon kind of spice situation.
Yeah, it's earthy. It's got a tang to it.
Apparently, it solves all your problems.
I think it is a root. It's kind of orange and bulbous.
So as you're pulling up here, you were what? Overwhelmed with all
It was the drive. It wasn't even.
Oh.
It wasn't even. It started like 5 minutes from my house, and it takes me 45 minutes to get here. So I don't know.
And mind you, we both live in Seattle.
Right. Yes.
So
I know. Kirk. Full disclosure, I text Kirk and say I'm on my way. Kirk says I'm still in bed, and then I say, lucky for you, it's going to take me 45 minutes to get there, so you've got time to roll out of bed. Yeah, so long-ass drive here, but there was, man, I don't know. I mean, grief is so weird in COVID, too. Like, I guess I've had time to talk about it. I don't know. There's something about talking about it with you, to the fact that you'd been both at the funeral and at the Shiva, talking about it with, 2,000 people that will potentially listen to this. It's been such a process. It will be such a process. I don't know if I sent you. I've been, YouTube deep diving into just the administrative aspect of this is so nuts.
YouTubing, like how to wrap up your
sell a house and rent a reverse mortgage.
You're in charge of all that stuff.
I'm in charge of the estate, which is, kind of a mess.
Right. I mean, that's what you were saying before we started recording, was that you have to take over everything. You have to pay the gardener to make sure that the landscaping is taken care of. You have to figure out how to sell a house, so far away in another state. And again, without going into details, you're dealing with a lot of other things in your life right now that are overwhelming to begin with. So adding this on, and there's no one else that the boyfriend can't do.
Oh no, he's 92.
But he doesn't have someone like kids or
no.
Your aunt or someone.
My aunt. I mean, everybody. My aunt has. She's powered down, and I can see why. I mean, this is on me.
There's not like a organization that can like take a cut of the house or something.
Well, there is. I mean, but we have to go out. So we're going out in a few weeks to just do an initial, get everything that we want
out of the house.
And there is a service that could come in and do everything, and I could have completely farmed it out.
Estate sale.
Right, I know. And he said, like, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest estate sale. Everything is free. And I was like, technically, this is a very expensive estate sale, but okay.
What do you mean?
Because, like, we got to fly out there.
Oh.
We got to rent the dumpster. Like, it's not. I mean, if we can make money on selling this house and then reverse mortgage, everything will eventually be free. But currently, everything is costing money. It costs money to hire an estate lawyer who never calls me back. Luckily, I found Goddess Nicole, real estate agent of Central Coastal Florida, who texts like a fiend, and she's actually in my mom's house this very moment doing an initial assessment. Like, good people have showed up. I'm renting a dumpster. Like, I mean, like, it's happening. It's just, you really need a spreadsheet. Like, I just need a second brain at this point. And I was thinking, oh my God, if somebody wants to make money, if somebody would begin a post-death, you're not a lawyer, but you're just like a
coordinator.
Like, instead of a wedding coordinator, you'd be like the death coordinator. Yeah. And you'd hold the spreadsheets and you'd hold the money.
Yeah.
And I would pay you.
Imagine,
Dolores.
I mean, hearing you describe it, there's so many ins and outs, from the initial knowledge that an individual is heading towards death, right? Imagine if you had a coordinator that was there the whole time.
There are death doulas, and I think that's great.
But who oversee everything.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
This is a new business that needs to happen.
Yeah. They can walk you through and say, so here are 5 lawyers. Do you want me to choose one, or do you want you?
Yeah.
And then I know this person. I can depend on them. All those kinds of things.
And the rules are so different state by state. I mean, if somebody could have prepared me in advance and said, by the way, in Florida, that body won't be in the ground in 3 days, and then I could have known.
Yeah.
But the poor job of the funeral director to inform me my aunt is now apoplectic that this is happening. Like, I mean, it's just, and that's crazy too. And in America, it's state by state, because the other thing I didn't know, everybody that has a parent in Florida, now listen up. In Florida, you need the person's full Social Security number to begin the death certificate process, which begins the burial process. Do you know your parents' full Social Security number?
No.
I don't know. I've asked everyone I know. Luckily, my aunt keeps such amazing...
Why would we have our parents' Social Security number?
To bury them in Florida. This is another reason I think there's a lot of like death fraud in Florida. Like a full Social Security number? Are you kidding me? Now, in going through her papers, it's turning up everywhere. But, I'm grieving, I'm freaked out, and they're like, first thing we need from you is your parents' full Social Security number.
And they won't bury her until then?
They won't even start the process.
Wow.
I'm like, who has that?
Yeah.
Luckily, my aunt, being the most amazing, meticulous record keeper, took a couple hours for her to find it. But she's grieving the loss of her only sister.
Yeah.
And now she's searching through all her files for a Social Security number.
Does she live in Florida?
She lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh.
So she's far away, too. When you get those like screen reports on how much you've used your phone? Do you get those like every day? Oh, I don't know what. I could probably turn this off, but I'm always going to.
It's probably like a child. Was that there for your kid?
I think it's there for adults. I don't know why we have it. But anyways, in these days, like from the 25th beyond for the next week, it's like your phone use is up 25% from last week this time. Just like constantly on the phone, texting, searching, who has it, where is it, texting you that the rabbi is giving me a hard time. Like, it was so crazy. And then like we haven't even gotten to the physical part. Like then there are, like, even though I wasn't crying, my body was aching. Like there was this pain. And then
what was that pain an expression
was like,
of?
I mean, it's the pain of grief. Like I can't even, there was like a heaviness, or like I went to take a walk because...
Can you... I mean, I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer this, but when I hear that, I don't know, what does that mean? Because if you had a semblance of a good relationship with your mom, I would understand... I would know that feeling. I wouldn't know that feeling, but I could imagine. But given the way that you talk about her and the way that she was... What is that pain exactly?
It just happens anyways.
Yeah.
There's like your body's on a conveyor belt. It's just doing its thing.
Like there's a part of you that was actually in
grieving.
Pain that your mom was gone.
Yeah. Or just the shock of loss, but then the craziest thing that happened. So this is all happening over Christmas break. Everyone in Seattle had the same head cold. Everyone was slightly sick.
Except me and Stacy.
Because you guys never go outside.
That's right.
Within 5 hours of my mom's death, this ear infection erupts like you can't believe. Like it's literally oozing.
Oh.
It's pulsing.
Oh.
It's so painful. And I've heard of this happening, and I teach this. I teach the body holds the score, and now the body is holding the score. I've heard of like, somebody dies and like you immediately start vomiting and you can't stop, or like you throw your back out. But I looked up, it was so intense. I was able to get medical care really quickly. Somebody was watching over me on that part. So I was like reading like what is ear and grief, and the first thing it said is where you put down a lot was the verbal abuse. I was like, oh my God, my ear is like back in it. And I had horrible ear problems as a kid, and my tonsils were so big that I was losing my hearing, and my mom, being such a bad mom, was just yelling at me to stop saying what all the time. And finally somebody checked my hearing, and I was like 40% deaf in one ear and like 90%. I was probably 90% deaf in this ear.
Did your mom apologize?
I think she felt really bad.
Did she express that to you?
Not enough for the amount of times. I mean, my main memory of being 3 is my mom saying what? Or me saying what? My mom saying, listen to me when I speak to you. It's also why I slur my words. Like, I couldn't fucking hear. Couldn't hear. So anyways, now I'm probably because I'm so messed up from grief and everything else, I'm not healing up great. And I'm probably going to have to get a tube in my ear like toddlers get. So just in the sense of like, hey, I mean, I've had this happen. I've gotten double ear infections. And, you take antibiotics and you get better. I'm getting okay, but it's still draining a tremendous amount. And I'm coughing like crazy because it's draining into my throat. And it's, when you are grieving and you're decompensated, is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not healing up. So, yeah. I'm having somatic reactions to grief, even though I've already grieved my mom.
Mm.
And why? I mean, I don't know. I mean, did you, like, when Phil passed away, did you have physical aches and pains?
I don't remember. When I would talk about, actually, yeah. So I sat down a few days after to record a video about him to publish, and I thought it would just be 10 minutes. It ended up being like an hour and a half or something. And during the recording, I had massive acid reflux. And when I would think about him literally being run over by a car and the violence of it and the fact that it was a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a hit and run.
Yeah.
And then later I would learn, incidentally, that there's evidence that the individual swerved into him. God. It wasn't an accident hit and run. It was a murder because the car was in the other lane. So he's walking on the left side of the street, right, where you're supposed. So the car was in the far lane on the right, swerved across lane onto the shoulder, hit him. Turns out that the suspect was suffering from psychosis, potentially, and maybe that's related. It's hard to know, of course, but. And that maybe there's new news about it. But anyway, when I would think about that, this is prior to me knowing that detail, but when I thought about the violence of it, yeah, my stomach would have acid reflux. And so, I would pause the video to take a bunch of antacids. I did that like 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my ear is your stomach. It's just having its whole own, and I'm sure you're like, what the hell? Like, did I eat something weird? Like, but it's like having its whole own experience separate from my consciousness. It's participating. This is its version of the story. It is in pain. It is inflamed. It needs professional attention. Like it's doing its own thing.
So where are you, do you think, in the story arc of the grief?
Boy. So, where am I? I am heading into the heavy-duty administrative part. I'm heading into touching the stuff. I haven't even, been to her house yet, so...
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to podcast on that. I kind of thought it'd be fun. I should shoot some video of the experience.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be so she's got a packed 3-bedroom house that I've been trying to get her out of for 10 years. In Florida, that I need to touch all the objects, and so it's going to be me, Eli, maybe 1 or 2 other people. We'll get as far as we can in 3 days. After that, everything that's left, we'll just hire a service to come and clear it out and then sell that house. So there's these huge administrative tasks. And I've had a client who the reason they came, they had multiple siblings, and they came because of the trauma of being the executor of the will. And I was totally supportive of this. We did some amazing work, but I get it at a totally different level now. Of just
what do you get now?
just it's an insane I have another job now, a job I didn't want. Luckily for me, this is the benefit of not having siblings. I don't have anybody that's requesting anything, or
there's no conflicts.
The only conflict is with the dead person. Okay. Yeah, there's no one fighting over anything, but like you have all these tasks that I don't really have time for that I gotta squeeze in. And then I've heard from everybody, like, wait till it's time to do her taxes. Or everybody has a horror story. I have another client who, like, can't get their mother's phone turned off no matter what they do. They're still getting bills. I think it's been like 2 years. I have a friend just wrote about how she can't close this one bank account, and, like, they keep sending her insufficient funds notices. And she's like, I've been trying to close this account for a year. I was told to get 10 copies of the death certificate. I now carry a death certificate for my mom in my purse because I never know when I'll be trying to do something and someone will say, can you send me a photo? And it's weird. It's like the actual photo. A photo on my phone won't do. There's something like, I don't know. Is it weird that I'm carrying my mother's death certificate in my purse? Like, I don't know.
Sounds like a pragmatic thing you have to do.
Yeah.
So what about the emotional arc of the grief?
Well, it appears coming to see you, Dr. Kirkonda, allows me to get in touch with my emotions. I am grumpy as fuck. So I know that that's a stage of death, anger. I'm not angry at my mom. I get real short with my friends, and I've warned them all. Like, I can hang out with you for about 3 hours, and after 3 hours, I kind of can't tolerate anything that comes out of your mouth for some reason. I just find you super stupid. Eli is an exception to that rule because they can keep me laughing. But yeah, I'm grumpy. And people just seem real stupid. And everybody else's problems seem really... And also, so like people aren't telling me things. Like this dear friend of mine was like, yeah, I can't help you out with that. And finally, I'm like, what is going on? Well, my partner's going in for a double mastectomy tomorrow. Preventative. I was like, what? Why? Like, so then I realized, like, oh my God, people don't want to burden me.
Is that the right move?
No, not me. I'm too suspicious. I'm like, there's something going on, and I make up all these stories in my head. So that was like, holy crap. Like, do you need my help? Oh my God. They're like, no, we're fine. So it's, yeah. So I'm grumpy. I get grumpy on the road. I know that anger I'm in a stage of grieving. I'm not angry for my mom dying. I'm just angry for the tasks of grief. I heard in Canada, as they know that someone in your family is dying, they show up. The government, a representative of the government shows up and has you sign one form, and they take care of everything that I'm now. Like, I have to do ridiculous things. I have to change her mailing address. We had to cancel her newspaper. It's just, the details are just insane.
Yeah.
And a lot of this you can't do till the death certificate arrives, which is probably why I'm carrying it in my purse, because I'm so amazed that it's here. It just took a couple weeks, but each day was like, I can't do X until I get the death certificate. It was just like this marker of like, once the death certificate comes. Maybe that's one of the things I'll do on the way home. So I'll finally go to the post office and get her mail to begin to get delivered to my house, and I need the death certificate in order to do that. That'll be one task I could cross off my list. So yeah, all of these.
Would it feel different if you had a sibling or she had a spouse that could take care of all this?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, how would it feel different?
There would be shared experience, and there could be a divide and conquer part of this.
Someone to, like, a co-pilot, if you will.
Yeah. And someone who is as focused on it, there's a real loneliness in this process of, you look at other people and you think they're not dealing with this. You could just tell. I mean, sometimes I look at in the mirror these days and I'm like, oh my God, I think I've aged 15 years. Like, you can just tell that they're not addressing this right now.
So on just before coming over, it occurred to me that it would be a good time to take some promo photos of you.
I mean, go ahead. Damn.
But so
I've got a hat on, like I am not.
So I asked Stacy, and Stacy's like, "Well, did you warn her before her coming over?" And I'm like, no, why? And she's like, "Well, you can't, because like with the other guys, I just sprung it on them for the most part." And so she's like, "You can't do that to Rebecca. You got to warn her in advance." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, well, maybe not this time." And then, and then
I'm like basically sitting here in sweats with a hat on. Yeah, take a promo. I mean, this is it.
Well, you walked in with. I mean, you want to? I mean,
you know me. I don't care. I think this is my best look. I've got one of my favorite hats on from the 2020 election. It just says "The Democrat 2020."
You have a puffy Patagonia.
Yeah, I'm all in my Snuggie, like most comfy.
You're in your special comfy chair.
I got my special comfy chair. This is the other thing about grief is like I'm basically surviving on protein shakes and like protein bars. Like cooking just seems this is why they bring food to the grieving. Like all I can do right now is like throw something in a pot and heat it up. The idea of cooking is like that's a lot of steps. I can't do it right now.
So what's it like to talk about it to everyone out there and me?
Well, it's weird. It's so weird that this podcast is like a major touchstone in my life now. It feels good. I mean, I know I just want to give a big hug out to everyone out there that's addressing this. It's so hard.
They want to hug you too, by the way.
Like, I know you don't have time to deal with any of this. I don't have time. And what gets cleared out of your life because you don't have time, like exercise, cooking, going to the movies, like you just fucking clear everything out because you're just like kind of treading quicksand.
Yeah.
I think America, late stage capitalism tortures people in a lot of ways, but the way that we torture people while they're grieving with everything that you have to handle, it's like cruel and unusual punishment.
And a result of our complete denial of death.
Yeah.
Like, this is happening in every minute of every day in our country, that all of a sudden it's foisted on them that they have to deal with all these accounts and all of this real estate and all this stuff. It should all just be baked into the system, Yeah. Like when you sign up for a credit card, there should be some button or some form that you fill out that's like, in the event of your death, or there should be coordination where as soon as a death certificate comes in, the government just informs the credit card company because they already have it on file, and the credit card company just knows to inform all of the account holders that, all those payments in all likelihood are not going to happen anymore, like for subscriptions of newspapers, for example, or I don't know, just something. Also, it is something that we as individuals need to address before we die with our...
get your stuff in order.
Yeah, not only a will, but also...
Power of attorney, living power of attorney.
Yeah. What you want people to do.
You write your own obituary.
Passwords is another thing. Like I have in a safe deposit box on a piece of paper, I have all the passwords that will get you access to accounts and instructions on all that. So you just need to get that thing, and then, because obviously I have clients and dozens
as
and
attorneys,
dozens of...
I haven't done this. We need a power of attorney for our professional lives too.
Right. So it's complicated too, because there's a lot of details that you don't think of immediately that someone would have to deal with if you died, right? Also, getting into your Facebook account so that people know that you're gone, that kind of thing. And what do you want? I've been pretty explicit with Stacy verbally anyway. Mm-hmm. If it's 90% sure that the best option is to pull the plug, please pull the plug.
Me too.
Like, do not suffer any longer, and don't make me suffer. I know I'm going to die. Let's say you pull the plug 6 months early. I do not care. If I'm at that stage of the situation, like, I don't want to be here anymore. Just let me go.
That's one of the things my mom went through this 15-hour surgery last December. They gave her 1 year of life. And
1 year of suffering as well.
1 year of suffering.
Like they would know. It's
out of control diabetes. You can only speak at 30%. So modern medicine is amazing. I have so many friends who've survived cancer right now because things are so amazing. And then also modern medicine's a little bit terrifying. And a lot terrifying.
Now, I want to say it's easy for me to say because I'm not facing death imminently.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a chance that push comes to shove and I'm in that situation. I might be screaming and fighting everyone. I don't know what I would do, but I would hope I would, in the end, accept reality. But at least when I'm in this state, I want everyone to know that you might even have to go against what I want in the moment, especially if I have dementia or I'm compromised. And so,
this has been a very morose joke with me and my friends recently, is that you don't want to give me power of attorney because I will use it.
What do you mean? Like
if I
you're telling your friends.
I think if you're at the end of life and I think you're acting crazy, I will
take you out,
put you on palliative care. I'll do it because I'm a double Capricorn. I was born the year of the dog. Like, I am just a realist.
Yeah.
I don't have any fancy, I know some of my friends are like super hopeful and believe in miracles in that kind of medical way. And I'm just like, this story is over. I know it. Her oncologist knows it. This doctor knows it. All the nurses have been telling me for 2 days, like, things are really out of control. So, like, whew. I wouldn't wish the way that my mom's those last 2 days after she fell, I wouldn't wish those on anyone. It just sounded awful. Mm-hmm. Man, to go out fighting like that, hurting people who are trying to help you, like, just, ugh. How often, like, David Crosby passed away a few days ago, and that description of him, where people say, like, he died peacefully at home surrounded by his friends. I mean, that's everyone's fantasy. That's my fantasy.
Mm-hmm. My fantasy is dying in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping. I'm doing pretty well. Mm-hmm. I'm 83 or something, and I go to sleep and I just don't wake up.
Yeah. I've also been obsessed. There's some really great stuff, like Anderson Cooper's has this 8-segment story of his mother, going through his mother's stuff. His mother's very famous, Gloria Vanderbilt. And he interviews all these amazing people. He interviews Laurie Anderson, and Laurie Anderson is describing Lou Reed's death. And as Lou Reed is dying, he's going through all of his Tai Chi sequences, and he goes out doing Tai Chi, and I'm like, man.
He died doing Tai Chi?
Yeah.
How does that work?
He's just going through the hand movements as he's dying.
Oh, while he's on the ground. Or while he's in bed.
Yeah, he's going. So if anybody's looking for some stuff that's awesome on grief, the things that have been really helpful for me are Anderson Cooper's beautiful series. Stephen Colbert gets interviewed, a bunch of other amazing people. I'm glad my mother died. Have we talked about that book? I'm spacing.
What's her name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did some episodes reacting to her and the interviews that she gave. The young woman actress, former actress who was on iCarly, a TV show I'd never, because I'm not in that generation, and how her mom was abusive. And then when her mom died, she wrote a memoir, and part of it was about how she was conflicted, in a lot of ways about her mother's death. And there was a part of her that was glad that her mom was gone because it meant that the abuse would end for her, because the abuse extended into her young adult life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I've just laughed my ass off. There's also a beautiful book by Isabel Allende called like It Happened in Winter or something. And it's about 4 or 5 different people combining the traumas in their lives, the deaths in their lives. There's a murder that occurs, and then all of their immigration histories and their experiences of getting to America, and her description of grief and death. And that book served me in the first few days. And I should say, I haven't been able to read since Trump was elected, so these are all audiobooks for me. And then I just watched, I think it's called On Joy. It happened in 2015. The Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu are hanging out together at the Dalai Lama's place. And it's...
Oh, yeah, you sent me that.
So beautiful. As they're talking about all their childhood traumas and their faith and holding on to each other and laughing and talking about that life is suffering and that the joy in life comes from being able to sit with your suffering and move to loving others. I was just, woo.
What does that mean to you, to sit with your suffering?
So the tenet of Buddhism is that life is suffering, and that you just gotta know that. Judaism is also pretty similar. I don't know how they describe it in Judaism, but it's that, life is inherently hard. And so we have rituals present to get us through those hard times. This was fascinating. The rabbi in the little book from my grandmother had said, Jews, if your parents have died, you don't do anything fun for a year. And I was like, what does that really mean? And he said, you could go to a wedding, but not to the party. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, you still participate in the ritual, but not in the fun part. So, yeah, I believe, and all my work has showed me, all my life has showed me that bad things will happen. Bad things will happen all throughout your life, no matter what you do. And that my work, and what I teach to my clients and what I teach through my tarot workshop is that these bad things are inherent, and then we sit with them. Hopefully we orient to another, maybe listen to that other story, maybe share our story with that person, and that in that building of community, that's where joy happens. That's where life happens. And I don't know, that's how I live my life.
It is interesting to, to be reminded for me about that, because of course I have my suffering, and to accept it, it feels better. It also feels more communal, like I'm not alone. Everyone's suffering.
Yeah. And what you've done on this podcast is created a massive community of people who can see that life is really complicated, and we wake up every day and we find a way on good days, at least to ourselves, and on the best days, at least to someone else.
Yeah.
And on the bestest days, maybe a group of 3 or 4 people.
Yeah. It is liberating to just acknowledge and radically accept the suffering in our lives, the good days and the bad days.
Yeah.
Because we have this notion in American culture that there's
Ugh, every day needs to be good. Blech.
well, and there's an answer to everything. There's a pill for everything. There's a
Right. Yeah. And people have been asking me, like, why is tarot so popular right now? And I've been pulling cards. I just pulled the devil this morning. It is the structure, Buddhism, all religions, tarot, like it makes sense of there are periods that are rough. And that's the mourner's cottage is the same thing. Like, you're going to be grieving. Why not say this thing? And the mourner's cottage never mentions the dead. It only mentions the suffering of the living. Like, why don't you just step into that? This is true for you right now. You don't have to fix it. We're just going to sit with it. It's not going to last forever. Some people's grief, I want to honor some people's grief does last forever. But you will have a different experience in a year, 5 years from now. And in Judaism, you mark the death date with a candle, a Yortzeit candle. And I'm seeing now, like, oh, some of that is to, like, mark, like, what has changed. I'm not in the same place with this grief. That I will be in a different place. December 29, 23.
where will you be?
I'll be a year out from my mom's death.
But presumably the administrative tasks have ended.
From your lips to God's ears. Please let there be an end. They won't quite be over because I'll still have to file her taxes. Death and taxes, literally. That's where I'm at. Things you can't avoid.
Thanks for sharing with everyone.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah.
What was the worst administrative? We should have like so in Yiddish you call it kvetching, where you get to complain. You don't have to feel bad. You just kvetch. It's needed. So we should have a patron board going kvetching on the administrative. What's the worst mess up that happened?
Yeah. Let's have a group kvetch.
Yes. Is there a phone you can't shut off? Is there a bank account you can't get to? We want to hear about it.
Yeah, that sounds maddening.
Yeah.
Well, you came in, you were crying, you sat down, we started talking about what you were crying about, and then I was like, do you want to talk about this on the podcast? And you're like, yeah, we should. And so I pressed record, and here we are.
And I swear, like, I'm like sweating, and it's like an hour or two later. I don't even know how long I've been talking.
Yeah.
I have to pee, so it's at least been an hour.
Okay. That's
my body's, yeah.
timepiece.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's let Rebecca pee.
Thank you.
And everyone out there, share your experiences. We're the primary place where Rebecca will be interacting is on Patreon in the comment section.
Yeah. And there was I can just talk about this forever. I'll stop. I promise. Anyone else stop. But there's a beautiful thing that Stephen Colbert cites Richard Blythe, the beat the drum guy from the 80s. And he talks about how in previous American culture, you would say like, oh, my brother died, and someone would be like, oh, that happens. And now let's change the culture. And so you can say someone in my life died, and the response will be, how are you doing?
And everyone out there, please take care of yourself along those lines. Why should they do that, Rebecca?
Because I like you, and I'd like you to be healthy.